Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. I'm your host, Chris Noble, and today we're going to talk about a really fascinating subject of at least the possibility of nuclear war in the distant ancient past. Now, that might sound a little crazy to some of you, and to some of you, this might sound like a theory you may have heard bouncing around the web and the alternative circles of the world. The reason being is because there is actually a startling amount of evidence that supports, well, that we had a lot of advanced technology in our maybe not even so distant past, and certainly our very distant past. And there's a lot of evidence around the world to support that. And we have many videos on this channel that already talk about advanced construction techniques, advanced tools, and technology that must have had to have existed in ancient times to build structures like the Great Pyramid and so on and so forth. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about specific forms of ancient technology, and that goes into the realm of nuclear technology, nuclear bombs more specifically. So in this episode, we're going to go through a couple of fascinating pieces of evidence here. So what we'll start with is actually, we're going to start with something that's trendy right now. I'm recording this in August of 2023, and the movie Oppenheimer came out not too long ago. And I'm going to start off with Oppenheimer's quotes, because his quotes are kind of what start this mystery, because he says some things that are very intriguing and not exactly what you would expect to hear from the father of the atomic bomb. Then we're going to move on to evidence from the distant past, the Bhagavad Gita, which is an incredible ancient text, Vedic text, that talks about these epic wars with the gods and advanced technology, things like flying craft like Vimanas, as well as, well, ancient nuclear technology, or at least the scripture describes the outcome and the fallout of a nuclear blast to such specific detail that it is hard to believe that they're referring to anything else. At the very least, it's a question and an intrigue that we can dive into deeper. So the Bhagavad Gita, phenomenal piece of ancient text that we will explore a bit more today. And then lastly, we'll get into this idea of how could we have even had this ancient tech, and were we potentially influenced by beings from other dimensions, realms of reality, and of course, just physically speaking, other planets, other places, as we like to call extraterrestrials. Maybe there's more proof in the pudding than we might think that supports not only did we have connection with these extraterrestrials in the distant past, but of course in the present time. And what's interesting about the ET connection in all of this is actually that a lot of the resurgence in extraterrestrial sightings, UFO sightings, and documentation, it really exploded after the creation of the modern day nuclear bomb. So there's a lot of interest, not just with humans in this topic, but of course with our wonderful, beautiful extraterrestrials located all throughout this beautiful universe of ours. So that's what we'll be diving into today in more detail. So first, let's start off with Oppenheimer. Let's start off with the grandfather or the father of the atomic bomb. And why is he such a fascinating study? Well, one of the many reasons is that he was actually obsessed with this text, I can never pronounce it, the Bhagavad Gita, and it's this very incredible ancient epic that's described in, well, it's originally written in Sanskrit. And Oppenheimer read this more than almost any other text. And let's get into why that might be. So the first thing is I'm going to use his most famous quote of all time, which was actually him quoting the Bhagavad Gita. And let's just listen to that first, because this is really what's going to start the snowball and start the rabbit hole of this whole entire topic. So without further ado, let's actually listen to Oppenheimer himself.
I have been asked whether in the years to come it will be possible to kill 40 million American people in the 20 largest American towns by the use of atomic bombs in a single night. I am afraid that the answer to that question is yes. Few people two people cried. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that, one way or another. I think the only hope for our future safety must lie in a collaboration based on confidence and good faith with the other peoples of the world.
So there's, clearly that was an elaboration, of course. There's a couple of video clips that you find in there, but it gives you a sense of a little bit about Oppenheimer and his character. He's a controversial, person, and for obvious reasons. But why is he quoting the Bhagavad? Oh my God, this name always gets me. But the Bhagavad Gita. Why is he quoting it? And why specifically this, I am, death, the destroyer of all worlds. Now, that quote of in itself can be interpreted actually quite a few ways. So we won't read too literal perhaps into this, although you can, and maybe that's what he wanted. But what's another quote that I find of, I would say for myself personally, of equal interest is when in 1945, Robert Oppenheimer was asked by one of his students, and I'm just going to show this quote here. So when he was asked, after his quote, of course, of "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," in 1945, Robert Oppenheimer was also asked if the nuclear test blast that happened, which was the quote-unquote first ever nuclear blast, Oppenheimer said, yes, in modern times. So Robert Oppenheimer, when he was asked how was the first ever test of a nuclear bomb, or if that nuclear bomb was the first, he said yes, in modern times. So Oppenheimer is alluding clearly to something that happened in ancient history. And then why is he quoting the Bhagavad Gita, which also records ancient history and talks about a nuclear blast? Well, let's read more into this ancient scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, which I'm going to have to say slowly because apparently my brain can't process that too fast. But let's listen, let's read what this ancient scripture is even talking about. And this is just going to be a small excerpt of what you can also read up on. And I'm going to put it in the description below, a couple of links that you can read the full literature of the ancient texts in the Bhagavad Gita. All right, so let's take a quick read here of a small part of the quoted text here. And I think you might understand when we go through this where where people like myself start to ask these questions of, well, maybe they are depicting an ancient nuclear blast. Let's take a listen here, and you let me know what you think in the comments below, please, and thank you. Okay, so they refer to in the Bhagavad Gita, they refer to what's known as a Brahmastra. And I've also heard a couple of different translations and depictions of what they're actually referring to. But what it seems to be is some sort of an ancient weapon of some kind. Whether or not it's actually a nuclear bomb is up to debate. It also can translate as actually like a very special arrow that one of the gods was shooting from his bow. But once again, was that maybe a metaphor for a larger form of weapon that they just couldn't put words to, so they used what they knew at the time, which was the bow and arrow, which we see a lot in ancient texts. So I won't go into any more of my hypothesis at this point. Let's just read it. You let me know, and I'll let you think for yourself here what you think this ancient text means. So it is quoted to say, this is in this ancient Vedic text, which is thousands and thousands of years old. It says, a single projectile charged with all the power in the universe. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes an entire race. There was neither a counterattack nor a defense that could stop it. The weapon produced a, quote, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as 10,000 suns that rose in all of its splendor. After, corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. Their hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without any apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all foodstuffs were infected. Any target hit by the Brahmastra would be utterly destroyed. Land would become barren and lifeless. Rainfall would cease, and infertility in humans and animals would follow for eons of time. So, I mean, you're reading this. Let's just remind ourselves, this is an ancient text. This is thousands of years old. How are they describing nuclear fallout, radioactive poisoning, and all of the illnesses and sicknesses that people develop with nuclear nuclear waste and radioactive areas that have, like places like Chernobyl and other places that have had this in recent modern history? This is exactly what happens. People's hair and nails fall out. Animals die. It extincts certain species. Food and any kind of agriculture in the surrounding area of the nuclear bomb are completely infected and useless. And the basically, like, the fallout and the ramifications of nuclear radiation go on for many, many years, as we know, sometimes hundreds of years. And this is what they talk about. It says that, the infertility in humans and animals, for example, would follow for eons. So they're describing perfectly what happens after a nuclear bomb. So you have to at least ask the question, is there some correlation here? Are they actually depicting some form? Maybe it's not a nuke, but it's something similar, and it's something that has the power of 10,000 suns? You tell me. You let me know in the comments below. What do you think this is? What are they actually depicting? Is this something completely different? Please let me know. I'd love to hear. So, moving forward, it's like, okay, cool. The Bhagavad it's every time. The Bhagavad Gita. You guys can give me some love in the comments if you can count how many times I've messed up that word or that name. But in this ancient text, this is just one of the many examples we have. So looking forward, is there any other evidence to support that there was a nuclear bomb blast found from ancient times? Well, the crazy thing is there is physical evidence to support that nuclear blast of some kind, or if not a nuclear blast, some form of a high heat destructive force did hit this planet several times throughout our more, let's say, recent history of the last roughly 12,000 years or so. And one of the most, let's say, glaring and important pieces of evidence on the physical sense that we have is a geological process called vitrification. Vitrification is when rock is melted at a very, very, very high heat, usually around 4,000 to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, and it turns to a form of glass. So this rock is heated at such a high heat, it then forms to a type of glass, and that process is called vitrification. The only way that really can happen is actually that we discovered recently in modern history was after a nuclear blast. That's what we discovered in at the blast sites of these nuclear bombs were this form of vitrification, rock turning to glass because of the high heat. Well, guess what? In ancient times, this may have actually been the case. So let's watch this video that showcases some amazing research from one gentleman, and then I'm going to show another video that shows even more research of other scientists throughout the last, seems about 50 or 60 years or so, that have looked at several places on the planet. We're going to look at one specifically in Pakistan that looks to be like a ground zero of where a nuclear blast would have hit. So let's watch, and we'll get into the details after, okay? Once again, let me know you got your thoughts on all this in the comments below. There we go. Okay, here we go, everybody.
Could it be that our past ancestors possessed nuclear weapons? And if so, would we not see the evidence? In the 1920s, the ancient city of Mohenjo-daro was rediscovered by R.D. Banerjee. Archaeologists believe that over 35,000 people once lived in Mohenjo-daro. However, it is still debated how this ancient city came to an end. Only under 50 skeletons have been discovered in the city, many appearing scattered and oddly positioned, suggesting that they had endured an unexpected and rough passing. Yet for many, the fall of Mohenjo-daro is a mystery. In 2014, mineralogist Sam Iyengar obtained a piece of pottery from Mohenjo-daro. He was able to run it through tests, and shared his findings on TV show, Ancient Aliens.
When I did the elemental analysis, it showed me that the Mohenjo-daro rock contained mostly silicon, aluminum with some calcium and potassium. So my thought was maybe it could be some type of a clay, till I did the X-ray diffraction.
X-ray diffraction is able to determine exactly how a material was formed.
This is the pattern I got, and you can see some crystalline peaks here along with an amorphous hump, which usually results from a glassy phase in the rock. The composition is very similar to volcanic rock. The only way the clay can be converted into something which we saw is subjecting the clay to a very, very high temperature. I'm talking 4,000 to 5,000 degree Fahrenheit. That is not something an early civilization can do intentionally. It has to be something supernatural.
Regardless of the evidence, we are not for certain that a nuclear weapon was set off in Mohenjo-daro. However, we cannot deny that something strange happened here. And is it even surprising that an ancient civilization might have had advanced tools and weapons? Looking at ancient buildings, how is it possible that those could have been built thousands of years ago? As technology further develops, and further artifacts are discovered, maybe the truth will be apparent to all. Thank you all for watching.
I'm going to let this video continue to go just on mute, because at the end it shows just some of the devastation of these bombs, and I just think it is still just amazing to think about that this technology, as terrible as it is and as destructive as it is, this is extraordinary power. And to think that this actually could have existed in ancient times is astounding. And of course, it completely goes against, the status quo and the mainstream, perspective that we're taught in history, of course, right? And the ancients could never have high technology, but that's one of the theories we come back to the most on this channel is that, well, as you know, if you've been watching, Ancient Mysteries Unearthed, or if you watch a lot of these other, channels, amazing channels and researchers out there, one of the biggest parts of our history that we're completely switching around the understanding of and the paradigm of now is that we did not progress linearly. We go in cycles. And if you look back at various periods throughout history, there are all these spikes of high technology that gets lost and then rediscovered, and then gets lost and then gets rediscovered. That's what we're dealing with here. So this is just an example. This nuclear blast that likely did happen in Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan, probably happened elsewhere on this planet. I know when I was in Egypt, around the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx, we found vitrification. However, when I was there with Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, he said that was evidence of a solar flare. So again, does it have to be a nuclear blast? No, it could have been from a solar flare. However, when the Bhagavad Gita talks about the nuclear fallout, solar flares don't have that nuclear radiation type of fallout. So the text is really seeming to narrow in on a nuclear blast of some kind, but we don't know. So these are all always just questions that we like to ask here on the channel. And beautiful audience, viewers, listeners, let me know what you think your thoughts are on all of this. Now, we've got some more fascinating evidence to look at. And I'm going to show this next video, which is from a great channel called The Universe Inside You. Check them out. And of course, the link to that video will be in the description anyway, so you can click that and get to know these other channels really well, because there's so much great information out there. And if it's not just all good information, it's also really good questions that are important to ask. So this is just going to go into a bit more detail on the area in Pakistan that likely did get hit by an ancient nuclear blast. So we're just going to add on to the information we saw a bit more in that previous video. So let's take a look and a listen.
In 1927, ruins were unearthed during a geological excavation in Mohenjo-Daro, Pakistan, which stunned excavators and experts alike. Starting at an apparent epicenter and extending outwards for 50 yards, the ruins had been fused and crystallized. In effect, the ruins had been turned to glass around an epicenter, which seemed to indicate a blast. More bizarrely, 44 human skeletons were found lying in the street, many holding hands as if they had suddenly been struck down by some unexpected catastrophe, like the Mount Vesuvius volcano eruption in Italy, except in an area devoid of volcanic activity. Upon examination, scientists wondered why these skeletons, many thousands of years old, had not decayed. When they were tested, the bones showed radiation levels many times higher than could be expected. At least one of the skeletons was recorded as having 50 times the radiation level it should have had. One scientist by the name of William Sturm concluded that the melting of bricks at Mohenjo-Daro could not have been caused by a normal fire, while Antonio Castellani, a space engineer in Rome, suggested it's possible that what happened at Mohenjo-Daro was not a natural phenomenon. But these types of apparently unnatural phenomena have been found across the Indian subcontinent. For example, in Jodhpur, on the edge of the Thar Desert in India, a 3-square-mile radioactive zone was discovered during excavation for a housing project. Under the ground was a layer of radioactive dust, consistent with what is found in areas after a nuclear detonation. Sometimes evidence does not make sense, and experts, Mohenjo-Daro and Jodhpur, seem to be evidence which suggested the use of nuclear weapons many thousands of years or more before the Manhattan Project.
You get the idea. So, wow, not just in that location specifically, but also around this location and other places in Pakistan, they were finding radioactive traces of radioactive organic material. I mean, that's just amazing. From ancient times. The thing is like he said, like the melting of that brick wasn't caused by what a regular fire could do. We're talking high heat, thousands of degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius. I mean, it's incredible, and there's really no natural ways, with the exception of some massive cataclysmic, let's say solar flares, could do that, and there would have to be massive plasma strikes for that to happen, and probably likely did in history. However, I think it's an and situation, that happened very likely, and there also seems to have been man-made or intelligent design behind some form of ancient weaponry that looks and sounds to be very similar to a nuclear bomb. So the questions and the mystery continues, as always, and we've got a little bit more. So the other idea and the question that I want to open up to you beautiful people watching and listening to this episode is, did we have help? Was this nuclear blast between humans? Was it between humans and other creatures, or just between other, and I could say creatures, or a better word would be beings, people, other people, just not humans, perhaps. And the thing is when you look at any of the Vedic texts, I mean, they talk about these gods with a small g, godlike beings with godly powers. So we call them gods, but what really are these gods? I mean, these are just advanced beings, really, that, any of us would, even today, would probably consider a god if they could fly naturally and they could self-heal and they were maybe 20 feet tall and had 8 arms and were blue or something, these spectacular features and abilities. We would likely be calling them gods today. But really, what were the gods? Well, in my opinion, they were just advanced beings from all around the universe, maybe within the planet Earth itself, other dimensions. All of the above are plausible. And when we're looking at history, not to take the perspective of ancient aliens to the extreme degree, which some people do, where it's like everything was designed by aliens. I don't believe that was necessarily the case, but I also don't feel like the other end of the extreme is true either, which no aliens ever existed and extraterrestrials aren't real, and they obviously never would have engaged with us in ancient times either. I don't think that's true either. I think we're looking at something in the middle of those two more extreme theories. I think extraterrestrials absolutely exist now and always have. And I absolutely feel like they did have influence and interaction with us in the distant past. The question is how much and to what degrees. Did they do all of some of the things that we think? Like, did they fully build the Great Pyramid temple? Help humans build the Great Pyramid as one of the many examples we can think of. We look at lots of ancient tribes throughout the world and indigenous cultures throughout the world that talk about interactions with the star people and interdimensional beings and all of these things. There hasn't been anything recorded in history. There's actually a ton of evidence in recorded history of interaction with these beings, with all types of beings. So if you're still not fully convinced on the extraterrestrial connection that may have had this advanced technology in the ancient past, that maybe they gifted it to humans, gave it to humans to fight some form of war, or they were using it themselves to be engaged in some form of warfare in ancient times, we obviously don't know. But what I want to show you are some examples of modern day disclosure to show that we got to be honest, people, extraterrestrials absolutely exist. There's just no real question in my mind anymore of if. It's an absolute yes, and now it's a more of a to what degree, how many species are out there. I'm sure it's infinite, to be honest, because I believe we live in an infinite universe. But let's look at some examples. Forget what I'm saying and my opinions, although I don't really think it's an opinion anymore. I truly believe. I mean, there's so much overwhelming evidence to support that other life forms definitely exist in this infinite universe of life. So let's play some of the more recent discoveries on the existence of these ETs to just show that this is not only a thing now, but if it's a thing now, it definitely was a thing in the past. And maybe that's the connection to this nuclear bomb advanced technology. So let's just look at the reason I'm going to pull these specific disclosure clips up now is because at least 2 or 3 of them also refer to the fact of the interest level that these ETs have with us humans developing the nuclear bomb. After the development of Oppenheimer's nuke, his atomic bomb in the 40s or whatever that was, all of a sudden there's this huge surge of UFO sightings, ET interactions, and all of these things. Of course, it still is hushed by the mainstream, although that's changing a bit now, but for the last almost 100 years, it's been something that was just massively taboo. But now that it's coming out, it seems to be that this has been something that has not only been going on throughout all of history, but seems to center a lot around nuclear arms and nuclear bombs. Extraterrestrials seem to be very, very concerned with that, and I can very much appreciate why. So let's watch this first clip with a gentleman. He's a whistleblower, Captain Robert Salas, and he's one of many, many, many very credible whistleblowers that are coming out now and talking about all types of things with the UFOs, UAPs, same thing, ETs and whatnot. So let's take a quick look at this video and a couple of others to just show that this conversation of extraterrestrials is absolutely real and it's happening. And that means that it definitely happened in the ancient past as well.
First of all, we asked our commander if this was some sort of exercise or some demonstration of some sort. He said absolutely not. But the object was able to do things that no airplane could do. It flew very fast across the sky. Stop. Dead stop. Reverse course.
And this is the story of the guards?
Yes. Story of the guards. And plus, as far as we were concerned, what it was able to do was send a specific signal through 60 feet of earth and concrete. Invisible signal, penetrate the cables we had, penetrate the cables and send a specific signal to each missile to upset a particular piece of equipment.
So I'm pausing it quickly here, and then I'm going to play another clip. So he's referring to these incidents, multiple incidents that happened where an unidentified aircraft, not human, definitely not human, or if it was highly advanced, unknown technology, but anything's possible, of course. But it was a UFO, and this happens a lot at these nuclear bases or these just weapons bases, military weapon bases. And it would come in, and all it would do is just disarm. It disarmed all of the bombs. So this is a captain referring back to, I think, quite a few decades ago of a specific moment where he witnessed this. So he's going to go into a bit more detail here.
So the Conant investigation did not want this to be investigated by their own investigative team. It basically was a cover-up, because they did not want this released.
So you're just getting more like kind of history at this point of this phenomenon that the military witnesses a lot, which are UFOs going near their I'm going to play this one from Dr. Stephen Greer, going anywhere near their facilities and just disarming things. So there's, I think, main reasons why this happens. One is because these more advanced beings have a higher level of consciousness. And when they look at us, humans on planet Earth, you can just imagine, right? It must look like it's a bunch of kindergartners playing with handguns. I mean, it's the same thing. If you walked into a playground with a bunch of kids unsupervised and you saw them all playing with like machine guns and handguns that were fully loaded, you'd freak out a little bit and you would immediately go in and disarm them. Like, you would go into these children who don't really know what they're doing and have no idea of the full scale of the potential dangers that they're literally playing with, and having their silly playground, wars or play fights and stuff with. Just imagine these extraterrestrials looking at us on planet Earth. We are playing. We are children. We are nothing against children, are beautiful and have sometimes the best perspectives on life. But what I'm saying is there's a massive immaturity with our species, yet we've got some pretty dangerous technology. So I think one thing is they're worried. They're worried about us really messing ourselves up. And I think that's beautiful. That's appreciated. Thank you, ETs, for looking out for us. I think, though, there's also a selfish aspect to this, and rightfully so. Dr. Stephen Greer is going to explain a bit more as to why these ETs are specifically dismantling our bombs and our nukes, at least as much as they possibly can, not only to save us, but for some other reasons. So let's take a listen as to what Dr. Stephen Greer says, part of the Disclosure, or the creator and founder of the Disclosure Project.
Huge mistake in the relationship between humans and these other civilizations. And here I want to put a button on this. When we detonated the first atomic bomb and the subsequent ones, when those go off, everybody knows what an electromagnetic pulse is. What they don't know is that there's an attending so-called scalar or longitudinal wave that is faster than the speed of light, that disrupts the fabric and communication and propulsion guidance systems of extraterrestrial vehicles. This is why they came in huge force in the 40s and 50s. And this is why every single atomic and nuclear weapon storage facility, processing plant and base and ship has been surveilled by these ET vehicles, because when those things are used, it's like tearing the fabric of space-time.
Tearing the fabric of space-time. So that's potentially what a nuclear blast is also doing. And that far transcends the area of planet Earth. I believe it would extend maybe even outside of the solar system. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know the physics behind that, and I don't think even the most brilliant physicists know that now, because it's always changing and evolving, our understanding of these things. But that's a possibility. That resonates with me. So I also wanted to show this very quick video from NASA, just as another example of what is happening literally this year, right now in 2023, and more recent history right now, where it is open discussion. The taboo is basically gone, and you're hearing NASA, military, all these individuals and organizations and institutions talking about the fact that they are absolutely monitoring these UAPs, UFOs, and are acknowledging the fact that there is action happening from non-human entities. So just listen. I mean, they use a more, let's say, a different language, but it all comes down to the same stuff. So let's just watch a small excerpt of this little press conference from NASA, first of its kind in history.
For the few objects that do demonstrate potentially anomalous characteristics, AARO is approaching these cases with the highest level of objectivity and analytic rigor. This includes physical testing and employing modeling and simulation to validate our analyses and the underlying theories, and then peer reviewing those results before reaching any conclusions. This is an example of one that I showed at the hearing recently. This is a spherical orb, metallic, in the Middle East, 2022, by an MQ-9. I will come back to the sensor question that David raised here in a moment. This is a typical example of the thing that we see most of. We see these all over the world, and we see these in making very interesting apparent maneuvers.
So, I mean, that's already incredible. I won't go too much into this. These are all videos that you guys can watch when you look down into the description of the video to check out those links for yourself. They're all longer videos. And just look at this. This is coming from the U.S. Department of Defense and NASA, all right? So these are not small. These aren't YouTubers like me coming out and saying this stuff. And that's still, I think, valid, especially when it's firsthand accounts. However, this is coming from the most official of sources. So the fact of the matter is, folks, we got to acknowledge the fact the extraterrestrials are here, and now we can really start to let that be one of the leading theories as to what was going on in the distant ancient past as well. Let me know in the comments if that makes any sense. So if that's the case, then we've got, you know, this extraterrestrial interest in us because of the fact that we've now got this nuclear bomb technology potentially back again on planet Earth. And if we look back through these examples in history, it doesn't look like we had a very good time with nuclear fallout and nuclear war. Could we learn from our mistakes, perhaps? Let's hope so, because what we're all about here on Ancient Mysteries on Earth is not just sharing the fascinating and incredible information that all of this is, but what are we going to do with it? We got to do something. Information is really useless if we don't take it into any sort of form of integration into our everyday lives. So let's learn from our mistakes and perhaps open our minds to the idea that we may very well be in a very, very abundant universe of life and many life forms. And those life forms have and continue to interact with us on this planet in, I would say, an infinite amount of ways, through just sightings of UFOs to actual abductions or encounters or telepathic communication. I mean, it's just endless where the influence can be. But I believe that when we look at the ancients and this hypothesis and idea of, you know, Oppenheimer wasn't the first to invent the nuclear bomb. There looks to have been nuclear bombs in the distant past in places like India or Pakistan or even maybe Egypt and so on. That, to me at least, is worthy of questioning our entire history now when it comes to advanced technology, especially with this newer revelation of the disclosure that's happening right now. So we likely have had influence throughout all of human history with other beings, whether it's on this planet or extraterrestrial. I think it's something that we need to start really realistically thinking of, and not go full on into like everything was done by aliens and everything was influenced by aliens. I think it's a balance. I think it's a mixture. I think it's very complex. And I think at different points in history, there were those influences, and then humans took it forward and do what we do. And we adapt, we improve, we try to work on those things. But I believe there's a lot more interaction with extraterrestrials and these other types of beings throughout all of human history. So this idea of the ancient nuclear bomb or an ancient nuclear war of some kind is just one of many examples of this interaction. Perhaps interaction, or at the very least, an example of high technology, whether it came from extraterrestrials or came from humans. The fact remains is that we've got vitrification, the melting of rock turned into glass all throughout this planet, but specifically in areas like in Pakistan, like we just watched. We've also got radioactive organic material found in these areas and surrounding areas to the supposed nuclear blast sites. And we've also got scripture that literally depicts the outcome of a nuclear blast in very specific detail. Again, the scripture full readings of the Vedic scriptures, and for example, which mainly are the Bhagavad Gita, ancient texts. And that's going to be in the description below. So do your own research, look into it yourself, and let me know what you come across in that ancient literature or any of your other findings. But the fact of the matter remains is we've got a lot of questions. You know, were we influenced by any other intelligences throughout human history? Did some of these influences lead to advanced technology? Did some of the advanced technology turn into weapon technology? And did that weapon technology resemble that of a nuclear bomb? These are all the questions that we obviously don't have full answers to, but we have some interesting clues. And let me know in the comments what you think about all these clues that I presented to you today. And of course, if you like this episode and appreciate the content we're doing here on Ancient Mysteries Unearthed, please give us a like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff that we appreciate. And if you're listening on other platforms, any form of just, giving us a rating or connecting, sending myself an email or a message through whatever platform you're listening on goes a long way and really not only helps us out, but it also lets us know what else we can be researching and doing episodes on Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. So let us know if you want to hear about any other topics. As for today, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I always appreciate all of you beautiful souls checking out our content. And if you're interested in learning more about Ancient Mysteries Unearthed and becoming a part of our research community, you can go to ancientmysteriesunearthed.com and check out the platform there where you can connect with other like-minded curious souls. You can join the membership of curious researchers, get access to an amazing archive of information, and also get access to an early advance notice of tours and events, because in 2024, Ancient Mysteries Unearthed is going to start doing a lot more of those. Now, you might be watching this in 2024, so check out those links to sign up for any of the upcoming tours, but we'll be doing our first one in Egypt, 2024 in the fall. So that's going to be a whole really fascinating expedition, I would say, more than anything, where we're going to go and interact with these sites in Egypt. We're going to learn a lot of amazing information, but we're also going to integrate sound, music, and meditation into these experiences as well, and really connect with these sites on a multi-dimensional level. So if you are interested in joining me and the fellow Ancient Mysteries Unearthed researchers, you can check out those details in the description below, and of course on the Ancient Mysteries Unearthed website. So for now, thank you so much for watching. Much love to you all. Be kind to others. Peace and love, and we will catch you on the next episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. Until next time.